Ms. Diener, if you would like to introduce your team, and we will go ahead and get started. Share with us if you have a budget increase, how those additional funds would improve services, and in the absence of an increase in funding, how your department will sustain the level of service.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Dawn Diener. I'm the public defender here in Nashville. To my left is Annette Crutchfield, our administrative services manager. For those of you who know me, you know I love to talk about public defense. I will try not to talk too much tonight. It's one reason I appreciate this chance to come here once a year and talk to the council a little bit about what it is we do at your public defender's office. If I had to sum it up in one sentence, which I'll try to, is we help people who need help. When a woman with serious mental illness comes to jail, we try to get her out and get her the help she really needs. When a man charged with driving on a suspended license, we ask him if we can help him get his license back. When a child commits a violent act, we try to understand why and help him find the healing and peace that he's lacking. When a client's innocent, we pursue the evidence and arguments to prove it. And when a client is guilty, we see beyond that one thing and do our best to help him do better. We defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We fight for justice, liberty, fairness, and equality for those without wealth in our court system. In short, we defend people accused of a crime who cannot afford to hire a lawyer and who are, unless, and I like to remind people of this, unless the state can prove otherwise, they're innocent. We defend Nashville. And that's a great job, but it is certainly not without its challenges and its hard work. And so the other thing I try to do when I come here every year is to say thank you and give a shout out to our dedicated staff at the Public Defender's Office. Investigators, social workers, secretaries, support staff, lawyers. Their commitment to this work makes Nashville a better place. It saves us money, it saves lives, and it helps people. The budget this year, I'm pleased to say I'm really happy, most happy about the pay plan recommendations that the mayor has included in the budget. I've been coming up here this is the 8th year in a row, and for the last 5 to 6 years, the first thing I started out talking about every year has been our employee salaries. And so the pay plan and the recommendations from the mayor's office are a big help. I'm really excited about that and just want to say thank you, and I hope you all will support that. The other improvement that is in our budget this year from the mayor's budget is what's called a business analyst. So that's a fancy word. So what was that person really going to do at our office? Well, this is a data-driven world, and since the year 2000, our office has had an electronic case management database that is integrated in with the criminal court clerk's office and all the other systems. So we're averaging, I think last year we handled 30,000 cases last year. So as you might imagine, data going into a database on 30,000 cases in just 1 year is a lot of information. And what we don't have in our office is anybody to mine that data for global systemic information that can help us identify where we're doing well, where we're not doing well, where we're spending the bulk of our time working, how much time we're spending on individual cases. And so the business analyst position will be somebody who will be devoted to that and also to making sure that we're following the kinds of processes in our office that we need to ensure we're getting reliable data. We have not had that for as long as I've been at the office. And I think it'll be a great help to us in terms of figuring out where we're doing well and where we need to improve. Two other things that I would talk about in terms of budgetary issues coming up for fiscal 17. The Public Defender's Office, in conjunction with the criminal justice stakeholders, applied for a grant from the Office of Criminal Justice Planning this year to implement a pretrial risk assessment tool in Nashville. So what does that mean in real terms? And let me tell you, they awarded 2 in the state, and Nashville was chosen to receive one of them. It's a $360,000 grant that will go out over 3 years. And essentially what it's designed to do is to help us figure out who are we keeping in jail pretrial. those innocent folks that I talked about who haven't been convicted of anything yet, but they're being held in jail largely, almost exclusively, because they're too poor to make the bond that has been set for them. So who are we keeping in jail? And who are we letting out of jail on bond? And are we doing that in the smartest way we possibly can? If we're holding somebody in jail for 2 weeks simply because they can't make their $2,500 bond, but they are somebody who would come back to court reliably and wouldn't get into any trouble while they're out, why are we keeping them in jail? On the flip side of that, if somebody potentially presents a risk to the community based upon evidence-based factors, and I think that's the emphasis that this grant places. It is on evidence-based information. What does the data tell us about who's a good risk and who's not, or who's a high risk? That person today can buy themselves out of jail. And we're not really taking a close look at whether or not their bail is being set appropriately, or more importantly, whether or not conditions of their supervision in the community need to be reviewed to make sure that they come back to court and that we're all safe. So this grant that we received, we will be able to start to look at those things. And the reason I applied for it most of all is because I see money bail as one of the biggest injustices that our clients face in the criminal justice system. Being in jail is a very coercive thing, particularly when you are presumed innocent. So I have great hope that when we start to use evidence-based tools and evidence-based research to decide who we're keeping in jail and who we're not, that number one, will have positive impact on our poor community, and number two, it will hopefully help us reduce our jail population of pretrial defendants. So that's coming up in the upcoming year, and I'm really excited about that. The other thing is our PIP. So we presented a PIP called Steering Clear, a driver's license diversion program, and that was in conjunction with many of the other criminal justice stakeholders as well as outside agencies. Essentially, it's called Steering Clear, and the mayor's office chose us in the presentations to go forward and pursue that. There's no funding attached to it for this year because the first year would be a planning phase. The goal of the program is to address in 2015, there were 24,000 individuals or 24,000 cases that came through our citation docket of individuals charged only with driving on a suspended license. That was the only criminal charge they faced. And what we know is that most of those individuals who are coming through there can't get their driver's license, not for public safety reasons, but oftentimes because they're poor and the system is very difficult to navigate. And so at this point, the district attorney's office in Nashville and General Funk is here, so I can say positive things about him. I mean, they get the fact that driving on a suspended license is not our biggest public safety issue in Nashville, where we need to be devoting a lot of resources. People get caught up in that system oftentimes just because they're poor. And so the goal of the program is to divert those cases entirely out of the criminal justice system, which will save us having to book the person, have the clerk's office create the file, have a DA have to look at the case, have the judge have to hear the case, have the person have to go do something, then come back to court. And then even if the case is disposed at that time, number one, most people haven't gotten their driver's license back still. And then we have the whole process of court cost collection, future driver's license suspension issues. It is a huge bureaucracy that solves no problems. And so our hope is that the Steering Clear program, and our belief is that the Steering Clear program, if we provide people with assistance on the front end without booking them to figure out, can we get their license for them? Can we help them get their license? And can we get them licensed? That solves problems. So I'm excited about that. Again, that involves a whole bunch of criminal justice agencies, criminal justice planning. It involves public-private partnerships, one of which is with the Jefferson Street United Merchants Partnership, which already is running a very similar program. So I think there's a lot of potential for that. So those are the comments that I have, and I'd take questions.
Thank you so much. Let's see, Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks. Ms. Diener, thanks for coming today. My question is, do you feel that the Public Defender's Office is adequately funded to provide effective assistance and counsel to Nashville's indigent population?
No.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. I would first say, so last year, in fiscal 15, we handled in the vicinity of 30,000 cases. And that is a mixture of first-degree murders all the way down to criminal trespass, public intoxication, driving on a suspended license. We did that with 45 lawyers. So if you do the math, that's a lot of cases. What that means in reality is that lawyers don't have very much time at all to spend on their cases. And frankly, getting quality representation requires a lawyer to spend time on the case. And it's not just our lawyers. We have a limited number of investigators we have 7 investigators who are working on 30,000 cases. And the standards of practice that exist for all lawyers is high quality, thorough preparation, investigation of all criminal cases. And so we are stretched way beyond where we should be. So in September 2014, for the first time ever, we started trying to take measures to reduce our workloads. That hasn't gotten us anywhere close to where we need to be. The biggest challenge, I would say, for us is that it's not really Metro government that's not providing the funding that we need. The state of Tennessee is falling down on its responsibilities. 25 years ago, the balance between state and local funding was around 50-50. Today, I haven't looked at the actual numbers for a couple of years, but I would guess we're somewhere today around 75 Metro, 25% state. When you look at state funding for public defense globally, Knox County receives more money for its public defender office than Nashville does. And we're handling probably almost 3 times as many cases as they are. It's a problem unique to Shelby County and Davidson County because our public defender offices pre-existed the state public defender system. We have done things over the year to try to address that. A couple of years ago, we got a $500,000 increase from the state, Metro did, for its public defense services, and at the same time, the state changed the funding statute for us. And so I think in the coming year, we may get an increase of somewhere in the vicinity of $4,000 from the state for public defense in Metro. It's a problem.
Let me ask you one follow-up. So when you say that there isn't adequate funding to provide effective assistance to counsel, is that just your opinion, or are there any national standards to judge that against?
So I would say there's a little bit of both in that. There are national standards. There are state standards. There is, in 1999, Tennessee released public defender maximum workload standards after a time study that was done. But they are now almost 20 years old, and nobody's followed them since they were released. Those standards say no lawyer doing public defense work should handle more than 500 misdemeanor cases in a year. So that's a number that can fly over your head if you really don't think about it. There's 365 days in a year. Court's not in session 365 days a year. Court's in session closer to 220, 25 days a year. So a lawyer who's handling just misdemeanor cases is expected to, under those maximum standards, handle at least 2 misdemeanor cases per day, every day. Whether that's a DUI or an assault or a shoplifting or a drug possession. And frankly, that's just not enough time. So I think when we look at the standards that exist, we're nowhere near, for our misdemeanor lawyers, 500. We're closer to 800 to 1,000 in our office. So it is a huge problem that we struggle with all the time. At the same time, as we refuse cases, private appointed counsel receives those cases, which is paid for by the state. So that's a good strategy in some respects. The problems that we experience with that solution is that the private appointed counsel system has no oversight or quality controls or anything. So if, for instance, a private attorney is appointed and that lawyer never goes to the jail to see their client or never contacts their client or doesn't do anything on the case really other than show up in court and convey a plea offer, there's nobody for that defendant or that defendant's family to complain to. They're just stuck.
I appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Cooper.
Thank you. If you would just follow up a little bit on your point about Knox County receiving more money, under what form, and because we were more advanced at having a defender's office, under what formula is that possible?
So when the Public Defenders Conference in the state got created in the late 90s, and it would have been very expensive for the state to take over both the Shelby County Public Defender's Office and the Davidson County Public Defender's Office. And frankly, I don't think either of those districts wanted that to happen either. So we were carved out of the funding structure for the rest of the state public defender system. And given, in 1992, we were just given a flat funding amount. It's a long, we should have lunch. But in 1992, that flat amount was $1.1 million for Nashville, for public defense. Shelby County's was closer to $2 million. The rest of the Public Defenders Conference had positions allocated to them. So for instance, Knox County had, and they came on a year later, had a certain 10 lawyers. We will fund 10 assistant public defenders for your district. And so whatever money went with that went to Knox County. The funding formula that was set up for the years going forward was in a statute that said the 20th and 30th Judicial District, which are Memphis and Nashville, in years going forward will receive an increase to their appropriation equal to the general increase in appropriations, to equal percentage of the general increase in appropriations to the 29 other judicial public defenders' offices. I hear myself explaining this, and I'm worried it makes no sense. But so we got really incremental increases every year after that. And so 20 years later, we looked back and saw that as the district public defenders had increased 230% over 20 years, their funding, ours had increased 40%. So there's no equal percentage there. But their funding formulas for each of the district is just based, number one, on how many positions they're allocated. And then there are statutory mandated cost increases like step adjustments, salary increases, fringe benefit increases, those sorts of things. And that's the bulk of the costs for secretaries, investigators, and lawyers. So their numbers have gone up because of the way state funding works. It's actually a problem that our DA here deals with because he has state-funded positions and county-funded positions. So I'm sorry, that made probably no sense, but.
No, I think the gist of it is clear, and I think it's a problem we have to try to address over time.
I agree, and it's not that dissimilar to the school funding formula. So if you're familiar with that whole issue, which I expect many of you are, it's not that different of an issue.
Seeing no one else in the queue, we thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.